there is a particular hour, not midnight, which still belongs to the evening, and not dawn, which belongs to the day. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, in a room you have slept in for 20 years, you open your eyes for no reason at all. Nothing has happened, no dream woke you, the house is doing nothing, and yet you are completely awake, your chest has gone tight, and there is a thought sitting in the room with you that you would never say out loud in daylight. One day this stops. Not the room, you, the voice speaking these words on the inside of your own head, the one that has narrated every single thing that has ever happened to you, goes quiet and does not resume. You lie there and do what everyone does, which is try to picture it, and you cannot, and the not being able to is somehow worse than the thing itself. The only light in the room is the clock, green numbers changing. I want to say the next part plainly, at the start, rather than save it for the end. In that entire hour, you are not afraid of death. You have never once been afraid of death. You are not capable of it. What you were afraid of was a picture, and the picture is a great deal older than you think. Fear needs an object. You can be afraid of a dog, of a diagnosis, of a phone call at an unusual hour. In every case there is a thing, the thing has properties, and your body is responding to those properties. Now try it with death. Try to be afraid of the actual content of it. There is none. There is no dark, because dark is something you see. There is no silence, because silence is something you hear. There is no waiting, because waiting requires somebody to do the waiting. Alan Watts put this exactly. In the book writing about what people in the West actually dread, he says the usual fear today is that death will take us into everlasting nothingness. And then he adds the words that everybody reads straight past, as if that could be some sort of experience, like being buried alive forever. As if that could be some sort of experience. That is the entire hinge. Your nervous system cannot hold a blank. Watts says it plainly. Imagination cannot grasp simple nothingness, and must therefore fill the void with fantasies. In a seminar on space, he is blunter about what those fantasies are made of. People project onto the prospect of annihilation, he says, the imagination of being shut up in a dark prison forever. So the machinery does what it always does with a gap. It reaches back through everything on file, looking for the nearest match. Something dark. Something where nothing happens. Something you cannot get out of and cannot be reached inside. And it finds one, because you have been in that room. Every one of us has. A child, awake in the dark, in a house that has gone quiet, not being hurt, nothing dramatic enough to become a story, just alone with time passing very slowly, and no way to make anybody come. That is not a memory of death. Nobody has one of those. That is the only footage you have ever taken of the conditions death is supposed to consist of. And your imagination, having nothing else in the archive, plays it back to you at 3 in the morning and labels it the future. Look closely at the picture, because there is something wrong with it. When you imagine being dead, who is doing the looking from inside? Picture the coffin, the earth over it, the years going by up there without you. Now notice what you have just done. You are in there. Not the body. You, awake, bored, counting. The scene needs somebody present at it, or there is no scene, and the person you have quietly installed is yourself. You are not imagining your absence. Nobody can imagine an absence. You are imagining your presence at your own absence, and that is not death. That is being buried alive, which is a horror, and which is also conveniently a thing that is not going to happen to you. Watts pushes this until it becomes almost funny. In a talk from 1969, he says that when you die, you're not going to have to put up with everlasting non-existence, because that is not an experience. And then he gives an instruction. And it is a strange one. Try, he says, to imagine what it would be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Sit with it. Something will happen to you, because the counter-question comes on its own. What was it like to wake up, having never gone to sleep? That was when you were born. Now I'm going to do something unusual, because that argument has a problem, and almost nobody who repeats it will admit what the problem is. The argument is correct, it is airtight, and it does not work. You can follow it completely. Agree with every step. Close this video genuinely persuaded, and then wake at 3 in the morning next Thursday with your chest tight, exactly as before, in exactly the same room. That is not a failure of the argument. It is evidence about what you are dealing with. An argument can only take apart something that was built by arguing, and this was not. The thing in your chest at 3 in the morning was installed before you had words, by a body that learned something in a dark room, at an age when it could not possibly have told you what it was learning. You cannot reason a body out of a conclusion it reached before it had language. You can only find out what the conclusion was actually about. So let us find out. I want to run something with you. It costs nothing and it takes about 2 minutes. We are going to take the fear apart by removing things from it, one at a time, and watch the level. Start with pain. Suppose you were told, credibly, by someone who could not be wrong, that there will be no pain at all, not a second of it. Check the level. It has not moved. So it was never the pain. Take away the suddenness. Suppose you are handed the date years out, plenty of warning, everything arranged, nothing left messy, no ambush. Check. For some of you, it just went up. So it was never the surprise. Take away the loss of other people. This is the hardest one to grant, so grant it completely. Everyone you love arrives at the same moment. Nobody is left behind, nobody grieves, nobody is alone in a kitchen afterwards. Check. Still there. So it was never the leaving. Take away the unfinished life. Suppose you did all of it. The work is finished. The words were said to the people who needed them. Nothing is outstanding. No version of your life is unlived. Check. Still there. So it was never the incompleteness. 4 things removed, and the level has barely dropped, which means that for 30 years you have been giving reasons that are not the reason. Every one of them is true. Not one of them is holding the weight. What is left when you subtract all 4 is a single image. Duration without content. Time continuing to pass, with somebody there to notice it passing, and nothing in it. And you know that room. Now watch what this explains, because it explains something that otherwise makes no sense. A great many people cannot sit alone in a quiet room for 20 minutes without reaching for something. Not because it hurts, because nothing is happening, and something in them treats nothing happening as an emergency. We call that restlessness. We call the other thing the fear of death. We file them in completely different drawers. They are the same fear at 2 sizes. The 3 in the morning version is simply the one where they have taken away the phone. Which is also why the remedies do not touch it. Look at what every one of them quietly does. Leave a legacy. Install something that persists after you, so that some form of you is still present. See everything, do the list, live fully. Accumulate a record, which is only worth accumulating if there is somebody left to review it. Even the beautiful ones, even the ones I believe in. At the last moment, every one of them hires somebody to stay behind and watch. The fear is made out of a watcher. You cannot cure it with a watcher. Here is where Carl Jung says something that sounds, the first time you hear it, either wrong or cruel. It is neither. Jung was a physician. He sat with the dying, read their dreams, and reported what he found rather than what would be comforting. In an essay called The Soul and Death, he writes that we are so convinced that death is simply the end of a process that it does not ordinarily occur to us to conceive of death as a goal and a fulfillment. A goal, not an interruption of the story, the direction the story was already going. And he had evidence of an odd kind. He writes that he had frequently been able to trace back, for over a year, in a series of dreams, the indications of approaching death, in people who had no outward reason to be thinking about it. The striking thing is not the timing, it is the tone. He notes how little fuss the unconscious makes of it. The images that turn up are not images of horror. They are the images that turn up at every other threshold in a life, symbols of rebirth. The same ones you get at a marriage, or a departure, or a birth. The layer of you that runs your dreams does not seem to have received the memo that this is the worst thing imaginable. Only the daylight part of you believes that. Elsewhere, writing as a doctor rather than a mystic, Jung is blunt. He says that shrinking away from death is something unhealthy and abnormal, which robs the second half of life of its purpose. He is not saying it robs you of your death. He is saying it robs you of your life. The thing you are protecting is the thing being taken. And then the line it took me years to understand. From the middle of life onward, he writes, only he remains vitally alive who is ready to die with life. That is not encouragement to be brave. It is a description of a mechanism. Look at what the picture is costing you in the daylight, where you can actually check. Every attachment held slightly loose, so it will hurt less later. Every conversation kept 1 degree cooler than it wanted to be. Every plan declined on the grounds that you cannot be certain. That is not caution. That is a small, ongoing, voluntary reduction in how alive you are, paid every single day, as premiums on a policy against a loss that is coming anyway. Watts saw the arithmetic. To the degree that life is found good, he writes, death must be proportionately evil, which means the only way to make the ending smaller is to make the life smaller. And people do it. That is the deal most people take without ever once being shown the paperwork. So what do you do with it? Here I have to be honest with you rather than useful, because tonight they are not the same thing. You're not going to stop being afraid. I am not going to tell you that understanding it correctly dissolves it, because you already ran that experiment about 8 minutes ago, and it did not. The fear does not leave. What changes is the address. You have been sending it forward to a date you do not have, about an event with no content, and it keeps coming back marked undeliverable, which is why it turns up again every few months at 3 in the morning. It was never addressed to the future. It belongs to a room a long time ago where nothing happened for a very long time and nobody came. And here's the part that matters. Back then it was accurate. The child really was alone, really could not do anything about it, and the fear was doing its job correctly. It has simply never been told that the situation ended. Nobody went back and cancelled it. It has quietly renewed itself every year since, on the assumption that the conditions still hold. So go and look at the room. You are awake anyway. In most of those rooms there was a door, and under the door there was a line of light. That line was not decoration. That line was the whole thing. It meant somebody was still up. It meant the house was not empty. What frightened you was never the dark. It was the possibility of that light going out, everyone asleep, the night continuing with only you in it. Now open your eyes in the room you are actually in. It is 3 a.m. There is a light on. Somebody is awake in this house at this hour, doing the only thing that was ever required, which is being present while it is dark. It is you. It has been you for a long time now. That child was waiting for somebody to come and sit with him in the dark. Somebody did. It took about 40 years, and it turned out to be him.